The 1.1-liter Ti-VCT engine was the last engine available in the Ford Fiesta, the 8th generation for Europe. It was the small three-cylinder engine, and in 2023 it was discontinued for all countries because the Fiesta was discontinued, and this was the last model that this engine was used in. So the name Ti-VCT tells us that this engine, this small engine, has the variable camshaft timing system for both camshafts intake and exhaust. So this is 1.1-liter engine with 3 cylinders. It's non-turbo. It has 75 horsepower only and 108 Newton meter of torque. And the torque is pretty good for city driving, but the power is not enough for highway driving, so you'll not be able to use this engine as a sports engine or something like that. It takes 14 seconds to accelerate your Ford Fiesta to 100 kilometers per hour or about 60 miles per hour. As far as I know, this engine was only coupled with one type of transmission in the last years of the Ford Fiesta, and it was the 5-speed manual transmission. But I really think that a good automatic transmission, conventional automatic transmission, would be very beneficial for this vehicle. What's interesting, the timing system is driven by the belt, not by the chain, which is pretty weird for this type of engine. And also Ford advertised 3.9 liters per 100 kilometers, or about 72 miles per gallon UK, as the highway fuel consumption, highway fuel economy. Well, you don't expect to get this fuel economy in this engine. It's possible, but only in some ideal world, ideal conditions. On average, in daily driving, you will get almost twice worse fuel consumption than Ford advertises for this engine. And this is the problem number one, because you pay for a car that hypothetically should consume this amount of fuel, but actually it consumes much more because you have to press the pedal, because you don't have enough power and you have to press the pedal hard, and this leads to worse fuel consumption than Ford advertises. Actually, the 1.1-liter engine was made to substitute the 1.25-liter engine, and that was a legendary engine that a lot of small Ford cars used, and actually Ford Fiesta. It was 4-cylinder, it was very reliable, and it was derived from the 1.6-liter engine, the legendary one, and there were not so many problems as in the 1.1-liter. So if you buy the used Fiesta with the 1.1-liter engine, you may expect it to be as good as the 1.25-liter, but it's not. But it has much more problems. In terms of longevity, these engines are very hard to predict how long they will live. I believe the average figures should be about 100,000 miles, 160,000 kilometers, till you have to repair this engine with some serious repairs. I mean, some expensive repairs, like timing belt replacement or something like that. But up to that point, it should live normal life without any problems, without major problems, let's say. I have seen some of these engines making 300,000 kilometers. 300,000 kilometers without major problems, only with some repairs, but it's rather the exclusion from the rules. And as a rule, these engines will not last that long. I wouldn't say that 1.1 Ti-VCT is a bad engine. I wrote an article about that and I listed all the problems about this engine. You can read the article if you want. And here I will just quickly tell you about the problems that you can expect if you buy this engine, used of course, because there are no new 1.9 Ti-VCT anymore. So the first problem with this engine is that oil consumption starts at about 50k miles, 80k kilometers. It's early, of course, but the engine is pretty small. It has so-so valve seals, and the valve seals actually become the reason number one why these engines consume oil. Piston rings live much longer, and the blocks, traditionally Ford blocks, live quite a long life. But repair in this engine is not cheap. Even if you just need to replace the valve seals, it appears that the repair will be quite expensive. So the important thing, you should keep your eye on the oil level, because these engines consume oil early and you need to check the oil level, because if the level drops, this engine will die pretty fast. The second problem is low power. I understand that not everyone actually needs huge power, but when you have a small car that can seat up to 5 passengers and you need to drive in the city where there are other cars around you, you need to drive with the same speed as those cars, you will press your gas pedal in this Ford Fiesta pretty hard. And when you do this, it does nothing good for these engines. It's not gonna break, of course, at once, but step by step it will have more and more problems, minor problems, and eventually this will lead to engine braking at a certain point, and it will need very expensive repairs just because of the wear that it gets when you aggressively drive this engine. Then the timing belt. I couldn't find the driver's manual for this engine, but I researched on the internet and I found that some sources claim that you have to replace the timing belt at 240,000 kilometers. Well, this is myth. This engine will not live that long at all, and even if you just wait to 200,000 kilometers, your timing belt is going to break. So the timing belt replacement should be much earlier. In my opinion, it's about 100k kilometers, 60k miles. This is the perfect time to replace your timing belt. If the timing belt breaks in this engine, it's very high chance that the pistons will meet with the valves inside the engine and the valves will bend. And so repairing this engine after that makes no sense, because buying the new one will be probably even cheaper than repairing this engine after this occasion. So how can you prolong the life of the 1.1 Ti-VCT engine? First of all, change the timing belt once every 100k kilometers or 60,000 miles. Secondly, change your oil a little more often than Ford recommends, like 20% more often. Third, you need to use Ford oil, or at least use the same viscosity oil that Ford recommends. It's very important for all small engines, especially for Ford engines, because they hate any different kind of oil. And if you start experimenting with the viscosity, you will just reduce the lifespan of this engine. Fourth, you should avoid driving at very high or very low RPM. Since these engines are equipped with manual transmissions, it's easy to drive this engine at low RPM. So you will engage the fourth gear, for example, and go with the speed of 40 kilometers per hour, 35 kilometers per hour, and the RPM will be 1300, 1400. This is making the death of this engine way closer than you think. Also, driving this engine at 3500 or 4000 RPMs constantly is not recommended at all. So just choose the average RPM that is okay for this engine, that feels okay, you don't have vibrations, you don't have awful sounds in your car. And the fifth thing, you should control the oil level meticulously. So be like religious about controlling this oil level once a week or once every 2 weeks. You need to take out the dipstick and look at the oil level. If it's close to the minimum, you should add oil. Better keep it at the maximum level, because this engine is prone to oil consumption, and you may just miss this point where when this engine starts consuming oil, and if the oil drops below minimum, there is a very high chance that the engine will get a lot of problems.